Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with, the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks for checking out this episode. Once again, if you're not subscribed to the series, please do that. We release new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm so excited to once again be talking to Dave with Glass Animals, who's got a new album, Dreamland. Hey, dude, it's great to see you. How are you?
Hey, yeah, really good to see you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right, man. I'm really enjoying Dreamland. I'm loving what you're doing here.
That's great news.
Yeah. I mean, you do something really interesting every single record. There's always seems to be a grand concept in some sort of way, at least on this one and the last one too. I before we jump into the time hole that this album seems to be, I wrote down a line here, and I want to see how close I am, because I wrote down it seems to be an album about who we are, who we're not, and how it relates to our relationships. How close is that?
I think that's pretty spot on, actually. Yeah, it's it's quite personal, and it's definitely that about like myself, but I hope that other people can see themselves in it and relate to those things. I don't think any of the situations I talk about are particularly unique or anything. Everyone knows people like the people I'm talking about in the album, and I'm pretty self-critical in there. But yeah, hopefully it allows people to do all that to themselves and I don't know, think about themselves a bit.
Well, that's the thing I get, because on so many of these songs, it's not like you're ever apologizing for who you are, but it's almost like, the points in your life where you're not comfortable exactly with who you are. And it's almost like, it seems to me like some of these moments are like a pep talk of saying, just do you, be you, which I think is an important message.
Yeah, maybe it's a kind of acceptance. I don't know. I'm trying to basically appreciate that out of a lot of those like chaotic and really confusing moments comes generally the most exciting stuff in your life. Like the big things tend to happen then, big changes. Like you realize something, and that's what makes you who you are, and can't always change that. Yeah.
Well, it makes for, an interesting multi-layer kind of listen, as I was saying. And for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know how I went in at this point about this, what's going on in this record, but as a bit of your bio goes, you grew up in Texas, you moved later on over to the UK, but this record hits a lot about that moment in your youth. And, I'm not quite sure your age, so I'm 38, so a lot of what you're talking about here is also my youth, in a lot of the nostalgia. Especially what's happening in here, and that's what you've painted this like a nostalgic memoir of your life. Why did you choose to go that route?
It's just happened, really. Like our drummer had a really terrible accident. Like my best friend Joe, he was in a terrible accident, and we didn't know if he'd survive. We didn't know if he'd make any sort of recovery at all. And I went immediately as soon as I heard that it happened. I went to see him in the hospital, and I was just in the hospital, sitting in the waiting room for weeks, waiting for news. And I think in those situations, it's kind of like lockdown. Mm-hmm. Like the future looks terrible. We had to cancel everything, and all the shows, all the recording stuff that we had. Just the future looked really dark and unknown, in the same way that it sort of does now in this COVID pandemic era. And I think in those situations, your mind just kind of naturally goes back into the past. You're not out creating new memories because we're all locked down. The future looks shit. So you lean back into the past and you like relive those old experiences. And that is kind of what makes you feel human, I guess. Mm. I don't know. I feel like we need to experience something to be human. And also people have like crazy dreams because of that, I think. Your mind just wanders through the past and like recreates it in your head. And it was just all that nostalgic stuff, memories and things. That's what was coming into my head when that happened. And so when it came time to write a record, it was just there.
Yeah. It's interesting because another one of the things that you've said about this, a line that I really caught on to, is you called it the tourism of nostalgia. And I've never really thought of it like that. Like I've struggled less this time. Like, there was a point in my life where I tried to reject nostalgia so hard. Like, I wouldn't, listen to the old stuff. I wouldn't let myself watch the old movies or just go that direction, even though it was comfortable. But once you do, you really do become a tourist there. I mean, there's a detachment to it. I even wrote down Mulholland Drive because I was thinking of that detachment, that feeling that you get from a movie like that or something. And so I was going to ask, like,
Yeah.
in regards to you, like, what did you have in mind when you called it the tourism of nostalgia?
It was exactly that feeling. I feel like when you go back and look at those memories, you're definitely not seeing them in the same way. You feel like voyeuristic almost. You feel really distant from that person in those memories a lot of the time. Like I don't know. There are a lot of things that I like look back and I was like, whoa, I did that. I was an asshole, like an idiot. I'm so not that person anymore. Thank God. And yeah, you just feel really distant from a lot of those memories. You feel like you've come a long way, and that Mulholland Drive. That's what I talked about Mulholland Drive in the first song. It nods to that movie, and it's that feeling that movie gives you.
Yeah,
exactly. You nailed it.
Just the weird part of that and everything. And of course, another one of your songs. I mean, you've called it straight out "Space Ghost Coast to Coast."
Yeah.
So this is one of my all-time favorites, and I was so happy because you don't find a lot of people who did. I mean, the Space Ghost got a lot of fans. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like it was the most main. It wasn't like to the Ren and Stimpy level of that type of, animation and cartoon or whatever. But there's something that I go back. And how weird it was and how it captured something in a moment in time that seemed to transfer. Like, people grabbed onto that weird and ran with it wholeheartedly.
There was that whole, like, Adult Swim era. There was what, like, C-Lab
right.
2021 or something. Right. Is that what it was called? It was meant to be set in the future, but that's now, which I find quite funny. Yeah, it was just all that Adult Swim stuff, and I do think it's sort of bred this more popular style of cartoon and TV now, in like Adventure Time and Rick and Morty and that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, it was pretty niche at the time. It was just like me and my mate. We also were too young to really understand anything that was on Adult Swim. We just thought it was kind of jokes and. We're discovering what teenagers discover,
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything illicit, but...
Did you find that you gravitated towards the weirder side of things like that?
Definitely. I think that came... I wasn't really a naturally fitting in kind of kid at school. This was Texas, and I was like... I didn't hit puberty till I was, I don't know, like... I mean, I'm still getting there, let's be honest.
Good luck.
My voice is still breaking. So I just didn't fit in. To fit in Texas, you got to do sports, basketball, and you have to like drive a car. Like I was also super young for my class. I was like a year younger than everyone else just because of where my birthday sat. And yeah, just wasn't really into all that sports stuff, so sort of found these pockets of otherness, and that was stuff like that, and music.
Right.
That's why I got into music. Yeah, you just put your headphones on, you feel, I don't know, it makes you feel like you got friends in, Dr. Dre is what I was listening to mainly.
Dre makes it into this record. I mean, the references. Like, again, I think that's what's so fun, because finding the references all the way through this record, I mean, it's almost like you got to keep a notebook for a second to find out what's going on and then hunt it down. Like, even Dre's one thing, Jordan and Pippen, and I'm sure you watched The Last Dance. Did you catch that? The documentary?
I did, yeah. I still haven't finished it. I got like maybe halfway through and then just ran out of time. I haven't had time to keep up, but as soon as like Christmas holidays come, I'm gonna finish that one off.
Because that's part of the fun thing about this, and I want to hit on that word again, nostalgia, because for one thing of being the tourism of a tourist, of having that detachment, but it's also this portal of time travel, and I think that's where the music plays the part for me. Like I've got a wall of cassettes behind me, and I'm pretty sure I could put on any one of these right now and put in my headphones, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in that year, in that moment, living that. And as a musician, how do you make that happen for you as well?
I get transported really quickly by music. That's kind of part of the reason I love it. It's like that's one of the magical things about it. But with respect to this record, I guess I was just trying to go through and really think about what that backbone stuff was, what those backbone records were to my life that like I haven't left behind. I still love. I still listen to like every cup. I listen to the Beach Boys pretty much every day. And that kind of built the foundation of the sounds of the record, and that's all really transportational for me. So I went out and got all the instruments that the Beach Boys would have used. I've got more here. I've got this is actually a Beatles one, an old Beatles bass, and I've got like racks of old stuff over here and some old. I can take you on a small tour. There's like Mellotron, classic Beatles, Beach Boys stuff, and then some like samplers that some of the new hip hop guys would have used. That's the backbone for me, is like Beatles, Beach Boys, Nina Simone, Dr. Dre and Timbaland, the Neptunes. So I went out and just got all that stuff as close as I could to that kind of stuff that makes those sounds, and I was resampling all the Beatles and Beach Boys stuff through those newer hip hop pieces of equipment, and then re-recording that back through all these old preamps and things that the Beatles and the Beach Boys would have used, and kind of Motown-y sounding stuff too. And then through that just kind of had this bed of nostalgic sounds. So that formed the backbone. And then when I was writing a song about a certain era, I would go and just think about what I was listening to in that era, and I try to pull some of that in. So you can hear also, I think you can hear like the Strokes. I think you can hear a bit of Radiohead. You can hear pretty much without Talking Heads in there for sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, like, excuse me, like it doesn't sound like a throwback record in that way. I mean, there's, having all those sounds, and again, a very fun thing to listen for. But as a whole, like if I didn't know that, if you hadn't told me that, and I just put it on, it still sounds like a 2020 record in a way. And I think that's got to be the biggest trick. I don't know if trick's the right word, but it's, I mean, there has to, I mean, was there a point where you say, okay, but it can't sound like, like when Amy Winehouse come along and the Daptone horns and all that stuff, and they were sort of trying to sound like that era. Like you don't do that. And how important was that?
That was important. It was always meant to be a hybrid, a fusion. It could have been a terrible thing. I have no idea. Sometimes you mix two things, it just doesn't work. But in this case, I think it worked. Yeah, I found a way to make it work. And it was always trying to use all of those older bits of equipment, but in a modern way. I was always using like an Ableton or a Logic and trying to just, I don't know, freshen those sounds up a little bit. Heavy, big sub bass. I love that.
Well, on that very first track too, I mean, right off the bat, you put together an overture for the album. So did you do that? You didn't do that first, right? I mean, did that come after all the songs were done and you were like, oh, I can take these pieces and make it into one song? How was it? What was that process like?
Oh, you mean for like Dreamland, the title track? That was the first song done. I kind of write in this way where I get the whole idea for the record in my head, and I have like bits and pieces, like little fragments of lyrics, little melodies, chords that I want to use. And I was thinking, you just kind of start piling all this stuff. And I think when you have a concept that's strong enough, the ideas really pile up. And from everything, from like the words you're going to use to what kind of intervals you're going to use in the melodies to what kind of chords you want to use, and that helps tie it all together. And then you just throw it up. That's kind of how I do it. I just sit down and locked myself in this room for a few months and just chucked it up onto tape. But because I had all the ideas and kind of knew what I wanted to talk about before really doing that regurgitation process, when it came time to write the first song, I thought it'd be interesting to like try a table of contents. So it was that was first, and I got halfway through and was like, okay, I should stop here, finish the record, and then come finish this off at the end. So that's how that song like sandwiched the whole process. I wrote the first half of the song, or maybe like the first 2/3. I knew what kind of chords I wanted to present in this song. I just wanted to present everything, all the ideas, all the like themes, musically and lyrically, melodic themes, the sounds, everything. And I just sat down and basically wrote the summary, the first half of the summary, and then at the end of the album making process, I kind of made a bit of a conclusion.
I mean, like, if you were writing a book, you would have basically said, I wrote the table of contents and then I wrote the book off of that. Like, that's, to me, that seems like such the reverse way to do that, you know? Like, that's
what happened. And I like that. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a more organized way of doing things that I've never really thought of before. Like, maybe when people write books, they should write the table of contents first, as structure the whole, like it's like an essay plan or something, you know, when you're in school and they're like, write your title in the middle and you draw a line out and it's this. And I guess it was kind of like a weird essay plan, but then you go back and adjust it at the end so it fits.
How important is the concept? You know, I talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the interview. Like is it, do you prefer to have sort of a grand idea going into a record instead of just a series of songs, or is that just how it's worked out?
I really like to have a grand. I think you can say a lot more, and I think songs mean a lot more in context, and it also allows you to do more interesting and subtle things. I think it's the same as like a short story versus a novel with chapters. I like the novel. I like the long form. The chapters should kind of stand alone as interesting things in themselves, but it's just, you can get through a lot more and contextualize things really nicely in
it seems like
conceptual form.
Yeah, after something like this, like the most obvious place to go is more of like the rock opera. Like, what's keeping you from doing that?
That's what's happening. Yeah,
the arc, you know.
Just wait for the next one. No, I don't know about that. My manager would behead me or something.
It just, I don't know. It didn't seem like that'd be that big of a step for you. I don't want to get a hold of ourselves. You know, Dreamland is new and it's here and everything. But do you have an idea of like future concepts that you would want to tackle like that? Like, does it work like that?
I have ideas for that stuff. And quite often I find I like try and tackle them. Like before I started this album, I was kind of toying around with writing this record about space, and I got loads of like space equipment. Like you can see there's a space synth right behind me there. Jupiter 6, classic space sounds coming out of that beast. But yeah, I had this whole idea about space and it just didn't have enough weight. Like I wrote a couple of like 6 songs and I was like, oh, there's not enough depth in this to keep going. So maybe there's like a space EP or something that'll come. Yeah, and I have other ideas, but I have tried a lot of things and there just isn't enough in them sometimes. This one had enough. Nostalgia and memory definitely had a lot in it.
Yeah. The space thing's been interesting because I've noticed that is in the artistic zeitgeist. And I've actually talked with this now for a few artists about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because so my theory on it, and I don't know if this is the direction you were trying to come from in that, but because of what's happening currently around us, just our environments, obviously politically and everything, it seems to me like if you take the Carl Sagan pale blue dot sort of, you know, if you go far away from Earth and you just see how silly all of this is, it's some sort of escapism, I find, for a lot of artists. and they're sort of going there, like a lot of them.
A lot of people are. Are you saying it's like everyone's having an existential crisis? Is that
a bit.
Yeah, I definitely had that a little bit when I was. Maybe that's why I stopped writing the space stuff. It's because it just makes you feel totally pathetic.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of, but you know, it's also been done. a lot to.
If you're going to write a concept, you write a space concept, right? That's sort of what you
Dark
do.
Side of the Moon kind of smashed it out the park, didn't it? Yeah, I don't know. It's just not. It doesn't have the like soul space yet. Not yet. Maybe we'll all move in and start like writing. I don't know. Space will get some kind of human warmth to it. But right now, it's just cold. It's cold. It's space. I don't know. I wanted to do something a bit more human. I think, especially when, like, after Joe had that accident, I just didn't. I don't know. It felt better to write about the things that are close to you because it made you realize how important all of that is.
Yeah.
And space isn't that important to me right now.
To be more human, though, you did create another human. Could you tell me who Wavy Davy is?
Oh wow, yeah, that's my it's my Sasha Fierce. I'm sure everyone knows about Beyonce's alter ego Sasha Fierce. I just think that there are some things I can't pull off as a quiffy, blonde British Jew. I just don't necessarily have the swagger to do most things that require swagger. And one of those things was singing on that song Tokyo Drifting, which is just a heavy beat. I did it for someone else's project, and it didn't get used in the end. And then I had a melody idea, and I was like, look, okay, I'll try this melody, but if I'm going to write words for this, I need to find a way in. And so I just invented this alter ego, Wavy Davy, who is tries to have swagger. And then ultimately, I realized I couldn't actually have swagger. So I got Denzel. I asked Denzel if he'd help. And he absolutely, blew it out the park. He comes on and, like, shows what actual swagger is.
Yeah. But, it's some part of performing, I mean, there's always a bit of character, a bit of theatricalness that goes there. Like the idea of a musician using an alter ego, I think that's something that more artists could benefit from. And that's not a criticism of anyone, it's just one of those things. Like, it seems like that opens a door for you to be able, for any artist to be able to get out of a comfort zone, to write past their natural parameters or something like that.
So much, yeah. I think it's a really good thing to try. The other thing that's really worth trying is writing songs as if you were writing for someone else. So there's no pressure on you writing something for yourself or your own project, because I think that's quite stifling. And sometimes you sit down, you're like, all right, I'm going to write this song for BTS or something, like totally just choose something totally other world. And it's quite freeing because you just have no restraints. I don't know, it stops you putting up these boundaries like, oh, I wouldn't do that for myself. And you stop saying those kind of things. Like, I'm uncomfortable with this. You just lose all that inhibition. And it is a really nice tool. I've been doing that a lot. And actually that was kind of initiated by writing for other people and doing some other writing projects anyway. And you just start to realize that's a really cool tool.
Are you still writing for other people during all of this? I mean, it seems like that would be an easy sort of career thing to do at this moment.
Yeah, the album's kept us so busy, much busier than I thought. I thought we were going to, like, release the record, and then it was just going to be like, okay, what's next? Write another one? I don't know. But it's kept us so busy. There's so much stuff happening, and we're actually finding, like, these new ways to replace touring, because touring was that ultimate way to, go show people the record and hang out with people, and we're just finding new ways of doing that, and that is really fun, but it does take up time. So just finding new ways to use the internet, and I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, writing for other people, everyone is sitting at home and is ready to go. So there's a lot of collaborative stuff going in the Instagram DMs. It's all flooding in. All sorts of stuff I never would have thought. And some of it's music, some of it is like candles. So someone got in touch about making a candle, so we did a Dreamland candle. This is the latest. This is a Pez dispenser with my head on top. Pez collab. I don't know what's going on. Like, everyone wants. We made some shoes with the brand who reached out the other day. They're here. I have like 100 of these, so they're all
That's
I wear
awesome.
now. Yeah, it's not just music, but loads of collaborative stuff is happening. A lot of music too. I'm not
Where
just
you become the big
sitting
entrepreneur. Yeah, this is.
Well, it's fun. I don't know, and it all gives. We're trying to do stuff that like gives context to the music, and Pez is super nostalgic, and I think fits in well in these types of shoes as well. Like that's why I grew up wearing Converse and stuff like that. So.
I'll wrap up here. There was one part I meant to ask, though, about that nostalgic, and I didn't know if it had anything to do with it, but Little Nemo in Dreamland. It was one of my all-time favorite NES games. It's a comic that goes back to the early 1900s. Were you aware of that at all, of Little Nemo in Dreamland?
No, what is that?
Yeah,
I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
What is it? Nothing to do with Finding Nemo?
No. Little Nemo started as a comic strip in the early 1900s. It was one of the first colorized comic strips. And it's sort of stayed under the mainstream radar, but in the late 80s, early 90s, NES, for some reason, picked it up and made this beautiful game out of it that still, stands the test of time today. It's a fun one.
I'm going to check that out because I
totally
have I have all the old gaming systems too. I have I actually had some, I don't know, I tried to recreate the sounds of a lot of those systems for the record. You can hear little sound effects and things like that.
Yeah, check that out sometime. David, it was great talking to you. Yeah, it was so great talking to you about this. Congratulations on this record. It's such a fun listen to do, to get into what you're doing here.
I'm so glad you like it. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been fun.